Today we will be discussing the elections, obviously. So if the last session with Professor Yaakob, we discussed from a particular PAP perspective. I won't say it's the entire PAP perspective, because ultimately each individual politician is different and they have their own ideas and interpretations of any given event. So if the previous time we had that interpretation from a senior PAP member, a retired parliamentarian but still a party member, today we will have the interpretation from a winner of the election, one of the winners from the opposition party, and hopefully it will be an interesting interpretation as well. Hi,
Hello.
Mr. Gerald Giam, how are you?
Hello, Walid. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. So, welcome to Instagram Live. Is this your first?
This is my first. Yes, very
Okay,
much
so I'm
so. Thank you
happy.
for
I'm
being
happy.
my first time as well.
Thank you. So, let me introduce Mr. Can I call you Gerald?
Please call me Gerald. Yes.
Okay, so let me introduce MP-elect Mr. Gerald Giam. So, Gerald, I don't really know Gerald personally, but we've met here and there before, and we've corresponded via email before. And in fact, the first time I met him was in 2011 when he was on the campaign trail, because
Okay.
I was an East Coast voter, and I was extremely impressed by Gerald. And at that time, I told him he would be getting my vote in 2011.
Was that at the nomination center at East Coast?
I think it was.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah.
Was it at Bedok View Secondary? Probably.
Yes.
Probably.
That's
Yes. Right. Yeah. So,
okay.
and that was in 2011, of course. And the way I approach elections is every year my vote is up for grabs, because the moment I believe voters pledge their vote to a party unconditionally, that's when they lose. The voters lose their own relevance.
So you're the archetypal swing voter that all the
Yes.
parties want to
Yes.
woo.
Yes, correct. And I actually think every voter should be a swing voter. Yeah.
It keeps the
Anyway,
parties on their toes for sure.
yes, exactly. And Gerald, of course, he was in that election, he became an NCMP after 2011, and one of the younger NCMPs, and he did very well in Parliament, well enough for him to be recognized nationally. And now he is MP-elect after having been elected through Aljunied GRC. So welcome again. So let me ask the first question, Gerald, and I just wanted to say that the Workers' Party represents not just the voters of Aljunied and Hougang and Sengkang, right? Essentially, the
Very
Workers'
much so.
Party represents the entire non-PAP voting bloc. So about 40% of Singapore. Because those who voted for NSP in Tampines probably would vote for WP. Most definitely would vote for WP. But those who voted for WP probably would not necessarily vote for NSP, for instance, right? So,
well, we hope to be able to, now that that many of us are in Parliament, we really hope to be able to represent all Singaporeans, not just the opposition.
Right.
Really all Singaporeans.
Okay. Now, that's a good point. So, the question I wanted to ask is, if those 40% of Singaporeans were extremely elated and happy on the night of polling day, and they felt like there was a huge victory, was a sensational victory for the 40% of Singaporeans. With that in mind, bearing in mind that you were carrying the aspirations of 40% of Singaporeans who were delighted and elated, my first question to you is, why did you and Pritam look like you guys were attending a funeral on the night of polling day? Why were you not happy at all, and you look so somber and sad when you guys just pull off one of the greatest victories definitely the greatest victory in opposition electoral history?
No, I mean, this is the first time actually someone has asked me why we look somber, because we were definitely happy. It was very late at night. It was, I think, something like 3 a.m. in the morning when the results came out. So understandably, all of us were quite tired. But we were happy. But at the same time, we were also very, very, very aware of the gargantuan task that lay ahead of us. And we know that the expectations of the people will be very high. And we know that the weight of responsibility as well is is very heavy. And we're very much aware that of the many minefields that could possibly be ahead of us as well. I don't think there was any there was happiness that we managed to achieve what we set out to do, and perhaps exceeded in some ways. But I think there's awareness that we have a lot of responsibility that lies ahead. So that's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Right. What are the minefields that you were talking about, that you were referring to? Well,
I mean, these are sometimes unknown unknowns, right? But what we do know, looking back in the past 9 years or so, that you have seen things like what happened with the town council and the controversies that arose from that, and the many small issues that may not have made it so much to the press or may not have been publicized so much. But it is a very difficult task sometimes to operate in as an opposition in Singapore, obviously, and there are many things that would be smooth for the government MPs, but would be rather difficult for the opposition MPs. So I think there's an awareness of what lies ahead, and it doesn't mean that it cannot be overcome, and we definitely intend to overcome all those hurdles. But it just means that it's not a smooth. It's not going to be a side for sure.
So you are referring to things like town council management and so on.
That's one thing. That could be. I mean, that might have been one minefield in the past 9 years. There could be other fronts that our opponents might open up or we might inadvertently step on. So it's something that we have to be very aware of. We have to look left and look right before we cross the road.
Okay. So that probably would not be the same for PAP MPs, you presume?
Right? Well, of course, they have their own challenges that they deal with, but there are definitely some things which they would be, in a way, easier for them to navigate, especially, for example, dealing with certain government agencies. And so I think it's just something that we have learned to also navigate along the way these past years. And I'll definitely be, as a new town councillor, as a new MP, I'll be definitely learning from my seniors on how they manage to navigate all these hurdles.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So thanks for that. So as I was said earlier, it was a sensational night for the WP, and there were many things that your party did right. And I wrote a list, and I wanted to see whether I covered all bases. So, I mean, WP's general approach as a moderate and responsible opposition has obviously worked. That's one of its strengths. Good marketing. You guys did superb videos. Good slogan, no blank check and make your vote count. Very simple, very effective. The debate performance by Jamus was strong and catapulted him to superstardom. Pritam's own leadership, especially his handling of the Raisa Khan incident, and credible candidates, especially credible minority candidates, which often have been the Achilles heel of opposition parties. Did I miss out on anything? Is there any insights that you can give us? Are there any insights that you can give us from someone from within the party?
Okay. I mean, we actually didn't have a meeting, just to be candid about that.
Okay.
Most of the videos actually were done by party members and volunteers who really wanted to do it because they had a passion to see the advance and wanted to see democracy advance in Singapore. So I think that passion sometime probably came out in many of the videos and in many of the shows that we did, because really we were just speaking what was on our heart and expressing what we had always believed in ourselves. So it wasn't something that we just cobbled together just for the election, just so that it will put on a good show for people. But I think the strength in what we were able to do came out because it is something that we really believe in. All the points in our manifesto, all the approach that we took, even if you come down to things like the moderate approach that we take to politics, wanting to find a middle ground to ensure that we are able to marry the both sides together and to be able to find policies which would benefit the largest proportion of Singaporeans. I think those are the general approaches that all our candidates and members all believe in themselves. So I think it just came out during the election, and I'm glad that I'm glad the voters were able to see us for what we were.
Okay, so you're saying the sincerity of the candidates, it came through, and voters saw that.
I think what you saw in the candidates was what they are. So there wasn't any attempt to paper over anything or embellish anything.
Okay, excellent. So clearly there were many things that you did right. So what were the things that you didn't do right? So for instance, as someone who grew up in Simei, and my parents still live in Simei, I mean, East Coast is obviously, it wasn't just as a person who lived in Simei, but most Singaporeans were looking at East Coast as well. So would you say you were outmaneuvered by the PAP on nomination day when DPM Heng appeared in East Coast?
Well, I think it's maybe outmaneuvered might be a word to use, but I don't think we could have done anything about that because the PAP has many more chess pieces to play. We don't have an equal number of chess pieces, and they have many more queens and rooks to play with to be able to checkmate us. So it's not so much a matter of we neglected certain things and that's what happened, but I think having said that, I think our East Coast team did a really commendable job to be able to get such a good percentage against the Deputy Prime Minister and the future Prime Minister. So I think it's real credit to the team over there East Coast, and as well as the rest of the volunteers who really worked their hearts out to really get the best result that they could over there.
Right. So I was also thinking, but this is hindsight, of course, right? In Aljunied, you got 60% of the votes. So it was quite a comfortable victory. And if, let's say, you had stayed in East Coast, and Leon had stayed in East Coast, and the two of the East Coast team members went to Aljunied instead, and probably you guys would still have retained East Coast. And I'm just thinking about this. Gerald Giam, former NCMP, Leon Pereira, former NCMP, Terence Tan, also somebody is quite credible and known, Abdul Sharif, and of course, the incomparable Nichols. Yeah, 5 of you in East Coast. And we could probably be looking at DPM Chan Chun Sing.
I see what you mean. Right? I think it definitely is hindsight, and the election result is something that I don't think anybody could really have predicted. There's so many sort of sub results within the result that were surprising to all of us, and I think definitely the result that the East Coast team managed to garner against such a strong opponent was quite satisfying, and was quite surprising as well, that they managed to get such a good result. So I'm not sure if we packed all our former NCMPs into East Coast, it might have made much of a difference. I've had a great team over there as it was, definitely with all the members that you mentioned just now. So I think it really is hindsight, but I think the result was what Singaporeans really wanted, and so we have to respect that.
So, right. So you don't think if you and Leon were there, it would have made a difference? This is not about the credibility of the candidates, but a lot of politics is also about name recognition, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it was also important for us to ensure that we defended Aljunied, because I mean you might have heard during the campaign that we had mentioned that there was a risk of opposition wipeout, and that wasn't just rhetoric. It wasn't just an empty threat. It was really something that there was a real risk of that happening. So if we didn't properly defend Aljunied, we were complacent about it, and we just left it open, left our back flank open. we might have ended up having no opposition in parliament. So it could have swung. It could have swung either way. I think it's important for us to ensure that the opposition flame does stay alive, and fortunately we had really good candidates to be able to put into East Coast as well. So I think that's what happened.
All right. So is it fair to say retaining Al Junaid was the utmost priority for the WP?
It was a very, very important priority, because if we didn't have Al Junaid, if we didn't have Al Gang, there's nothing left. So what happens to the opposition movement for the next 20 years if we are wiped out from parliament? We've seen what happened in the 1960s when the opposition. We don't want to have. We don't want to see a repeat of that, because it sets right. Not just the opposition movement back for many years, but it sets Singapore back if that happens.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. So let's move on to electoral innovations, right, which are somewhat unique to Singapore. And I think you are the perfect person to talk to about this. So the NCMP. So as I understand it, you are in principle opposed to the NCMP, right?
We are. We don't think the NCMPs are necessary. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So why does WP oppose the NCMP when clearly the biggest benefit? Why do you still oppose the NCMP scheme? Because clearly the biggest beneficiaries of the NCMP scheme is your party. People like yourself and Ms. Sylvia Lim and Mr. Leon Pereira have clearly benefited from the scheme. And also your concerns about dissuading voters from voting for the opposition clearly have not panned out. So why is the WP still against the NCMP scheme in principle? Yeah,
well, I think I would flip it around the other way. I would say that we have made electoral progress despite the NCMP scheme. Not because it was fantastic, but really because the NCMP scheme has a potentially insidious effect of lulling people into thinking that they can have opposition MPs without voting for the opposition. I think that's the most dangerous mindset or fear that we have, that the electorate might have. And although the results sort of indicate that many voters did not think that way, the fact that the PAP was campaigning quite heavily on the idea of NCMPs and there's no need to vote for the opposition, I think they have clearly done their research, they've clearly done their surveys, and have clearly concluded that I don't think that could sway swing voters at least into voting for the government, because they think that they will be adequately represented in Parliament by NCMPs. And all the innovations that the government did just in the last term, giving full voting rights, it's, although it doesn't make a dime of difference actually in terms of the power of the NCMPs or the influence of the NCMPs. Actually, it kind of tells the voters that, hey, by not voting for them, you can still get your cake and eat it too. And that that's clearly not the case for Singapore. And that's something that we had to expend a lot of time trying to explain to people that wasn't the case. So I think I wouldn't say that we have been the beneficiary of this, but despite the scheme being there, I think we still made some progress, and really all credit goes to the voters, especially in Aljunied and Sengkang and Hougang, who have decided that they want to see an elected.
Right. So, but it and you're right. The PAP campaign on that, and it was clear that was going to be one of the main selling points in their campaign, but it didn't work, right? So now you would be more receptive, or you would be more accepting of the NCMP scheme, knowing that Singaporeans do not buy that, and yet there is a fallback for opposition MPs.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't say it didn't. Yeah. I wouldn't say it didn't work. We didn't manage to sweep all 12 seats. We still only had 10 seats, and the PSP was not able to get over that 2 or 3% more to be able to get the to get elected in Parliament, and they had to settle for NCMPs as well. So I wouldn't say it didn't work for the PAP, clearly not all the voters in West Coast and the other competitive constituencies felt that they wanted elected opposition MPs in Parliament.
Okay, thanks for that. Especially as a former NCMP yourself, I think you are quite qualified to give a take on that. What about the GRCs? You are opposed to that as well, in principle?
We feel that the GRCs are not inherently. It favors the ruling party. In many ways, they have the upper hand in terms of resources, and it's something that we oppose from the beginning, but it's not something that we oppose to the point where we do not participate in elections where we don't contest in GRCs, because that would be a bit silly for us to do. So it's something that we have learned to live with, and we've learned to accommodate to. But I think the purpose of the GRCs that was mentioned earlier on when they were first introduced was to ensure minority representation in Parliament, and I think that's a worthy goal to be working towards, and to ensure that all voices are represented from all communities. So that's very important for us. But I don't think the GRC system itself is the only way to ensure there is adequate minority representation. And clearly, a lot of the responsibility lies with both the political parties, who are the ones who are fielding the candidates, and the voters who are choosing the candidates to be elected into Parliament. And I think you have seen from this election that you have minority candidates who have contested in SMCs and won. That's in Bukit Batok. You have minority opposition candidates who have contested in GRCs against incumbent Chinese candidates and got very close to winning. That happened in Bukit Panjang with Paul Tambia. So clearly there is a desire for there is an acceptance among the electorate that they will not just vote along racial lines. And of course, in our unit, we had 3 candidates out of 5 who were minorities. So it's not to say we had the highest percentage in terms of the opposition vote. So it's not the case that minorities cannot be competitive against majority candidates. And I think that again a lot of credit goes to Singaporeans for being that open-minded and realizing that we are living in a multiracial society, and we do need to be able to choose the best persons. I don't think the voters were really choosing based on race. They were choosing based on who they felt was best able to represent them.
Okay, so I don't know whether everyone knows this, but Gerald is a unique MP in the upcoming Parliament, because he's the only male Chinese who's a minority in his GRC. All right?
Never thought of that.
So Miss Sylvia is also a minority, so she's the only female minority in her GRC team.
We're
so
all minorities in some way.
Yes. So once in a while you get to feel how the Malays and Indians feel in Singapore. But yeah, so I wanted to ask, I'll push you a little bit on that. If that's the case, how would you guarantee minority representation without the GRCs?
I think that really, okay, in the first place, if you're saying we want to guarantee, then that would take away the mandate that the minorities have as well. Because if you're saying that if a certain candidate got in purely on the basis of a certain guarantee that they had that they would be elected, then where is the legitimacy in that? Where is the electoral legitimacy in that? And I think it's very important that our minority candidates, or any candidate for that matter, has the electoral legitimacy, and that people see that they got elected based on their own strengths and their own visions and values that they wanted to explain in Parliament and share in Parliament. So I don't think we necessarily should expect that there's a guarantee of being elected. But having said that, I think, as I mentioned earlier on, really it comes down to the parties ensuring that they have that they feel candidates, they feel good candidates who are minorities, and they ensure that they actively go out to search for candidates and be an inclusive party, so that minorities will feel safe and feel comfortable joining the party and running under their ticket. And at the same time, I think we need to educate our electorate, and especially the young, beyond race as a marker for who they're going to vote in. I think this has, if you look at many other countries in the world, this has been the bane for a lot of the countries, where parties and politics is centered around different races and different tribes. I think that's a very unfortunate road to be down, and something we want to avoid with everything that we have. So right. I think we have to ensure that the parties continue to field good candidates who are from all the different races in the country.
Right. I think that's a fair comment. I think that definitely is the worry of that happening, right? If minorities are elected through GRCs, for instance, if anyone who's with SM Taman would get elected, right? That's just how it is. Like, I could run tomorrow in Jurong alongside SM Taman, and I would be an MP, right? So
I'm sure you could run on your own and win.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, but I would be guaranteed a victory if I were with SM Taman. So there is that worry about riding on the coattails effect, and your legitimacy, as you rightly pointed out, is affected. But on the other hand, there is also, so there is a trade-off between meritocracy and representation, I think. On the other hand, my worry is if racial stereotypes exist, and if they are pernicious, and we associate certain traits with certain races, race may not be the only factor in voting, but it may be a factor in voting. And without adequate institutions to guarantee minority representation, it may not happen. As in, I was just wondering if you wanted to react to that sentiment.
I think what you have said is, I've heard that argument before, and hypothetically, yes, you might be correct, but I think the studies have also shown, and there have been surveys done on where they ask voters, would you choose this person who is this race over this person who is this other race, and then they've indicated they will prefer their own race. But then when they present the actual person, for example, right. SM Taman, clearly the individual beats the other person hands down. So I think when you say that everything else being equal, of course people want to vote for someone whom looks like them and talks like them. But if you present many other factors in front of them, the issues of race, especially in Singapore, I think go much further down the priority list. So I think your follow-up question would then be: is this influence of race enough to tip the scales in terms of
yes,
if it's a very very close race?
Right.
That's hypothetical also. It really, I think if we have clearly a good candidate, and usually, I mean, if you look at all the different constituencies that have been contested, very often it's quite clear who is the better candidate. Okay, and I think voters can see it, Singaporeans can see it, and it's not going to be down to just everything else being equal now, not just down to the race. I don't think in real life it works out that way.
Okay, fair enough. I think that's a comprehensive answer. Thank you so much for that, Gerald. So the next, the future of the opposition. So we just found out something about the role of the leader of the opposition. So what are your preliminary thoughts or reactions to that? What does the position of the leader of the opposition does for opposition politics in Singapore?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I never thought of until the night of the election, when Rita actually shared with me that she just received a call from PM and he was told about this position of leader of the opposition. So it's definitely something very new for all of us in Singapore. There has been mentioned before of an unofficial leader of the opposition, but we didn't follow through with that. We didn't accept that position. What this issue of the official leader of the opposition is something that's new for Singapore. It's not something that's new in other Commonwealth countries. And so clearly we have no precedents to go by in Singapore since the role is so new. And it's not even defined in our constitution and our standing orders. So I think it's clear that both PM Lee as well as Pritam are very aware that the rules and practices that they establish now will set the precedent for future leaders of the opposition, and really the very nature of our parliamentary system. So I think both sides will need to really think through the steps very carefully and realize that it's not just for the current term that we are building for, but for many, many terms in the future, even when the current leader of the opposition and current prime minister are no longer in the picture, the practices that we set now will set the precedents for the future.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think that is a space we have to continue watching because it's very new and we do not know how it will really develop in practice. So I wanted to ask two questions, and the next two questions, they can be contradictory. So on one hand, so the first question is, on one hand, there are some people who say that the Workers' Party has abandoned the party's core base, which is the working class, especially the traditional Chinese-speaking base. And this was most evident in the party not sending a candidate to the Chinese debate. And you can see that, and these people, and some of them are prominent, claim that the Workers' Party is moving left. And you see this in the fielding of woke candidates, right? And especially Raisa, I would say, is the first truly woke candidate. So what are your comments on that? The Workers' Party abandoning its core base?
Yeah, no, I think I would say that I don't think that's happening. The working class in Singapore and all working Singaporeans, as our party name suggests, are still our core focus. Whether they form the base or not, I think that's really for the voters themselves to decide. But we are still very much a party that's focused on bread and butter issue, ensuring that we are looking after the lower income and ensuring that those who are less advantaged in our society are given the support that they need to level up with the rest of society. So this comes through in almost everything that we do. I mean, from our manifesto, all our proposals in our manifesto, to what we say in Parliament, it all reflects the ethos to ensure that those who are less able and less strong in our society are given the support that they need. So that remains the core of what Workers' Party does, and that will continue to remain what we focus on. Of course, our society has changed over the years, and it has more diverse and it has split in many ways. So we also have to ensure that we look after the concerns of the groups of Singaporeans. For example, in the past, the focus was really on the lowest income Singaporeans and those who are in poverty. But now we see a lot of our residents who may be middle income, maybe lower middle income, but they are facing lots of challenges because they are sandwiched. They don't have the high salaries that many of the richer Singaporeans have. Supporting their elderly parents, they are supporting their children. So this might actually be a group of Singaporeans that we actually need to pay more attention to, because they don't qualify for a lot of the subsidies that lower income Singaporeans do, but yet they are still struggling. And so we have to be aware that demographics, our economy has changed over the years, and we cannot just be focused on Singaporeans. And so But whether that means that we have abandoned our core base, no, I don't think so. I think they are still very much focused on ensuring that the lower and middle income Singaporeans are able to thrive in Singapore.
Right. And also, I guess the definition of the working class or the middle income changes over time as well, right? So that's something. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there was a comment, and I completely agree with this. It's inaccurate to say that woke issues are not bread and butter issues. Often we talk about it as if there's a dichotomy, but inequality is very much a bread and butter issue, right? And it's usually people who are more woke, they tend to care about this. Not that others do not.
Of course.
But anyway, so the second question is.
Comment on that
sorry.
point.
Yeah. Sure.
I just make a comment on that. I completely agree with you that certain issues which are associated with being liberal and all that are not necessarily non-bread and butter. I mean, for example, things like discrimination laws. That's something that we had advocated in our manifesto, and we realized that there is a basis for introducing some laws like that, because there are many minorities who face discrimination when they apply for jobs, and we need to ensure that this kind of discrimination does not get institutionalized and does not get perpetuated, and we ensure that everybody feels that they have a fair chance at being able to advance themselves in the society. So we do have to pay attention to those issues as well, and I consider those bread and butter issues. Whether or not you want to classify that as woke issues or not, I think that's up. Whether it's gender equality, whether it's racial equality, I think those things are all things that we have to really focus on in the time moving forward.
Right. Okay. So there's that strand of criticism against the Workers' Party. Then there's another one where people feel that, especially opposition supporters, feel that the WP is not left enough. It is too conservative and it is too moderate and doesn't go against the grain too much. And this is reflected in things like Section 377A or LGBT issues, or just a general philosophy in terms of opposing the PAP. What are your comments on that?
Well, I think I don't know how much of this is really seeded by our opponents themselves, because I mean there was this accusation of us being PAP light and just taking one step to the left and all that. So I would take some of those criticisms with a bit of a pinch of salt. At the same time, I think it comes back down to what our values are as party members and as a party, what we want to push for. And really, it comes down to the livelihoods of Singaporeans. How does a certain policy improve the lives of ordinary Singaporeans? If it is an issue which is so existential, or an issue which is so far out, that it's maybe would appeal to a very small group of people, but doesn't really affect the livelihoods of the majority of Singaporeans. I think, of course, those might be important issues, and it's not something that we should completely ignore. But we have to concentrate our limited resources and energies and time on issues which really matter to the majority of Singaporeans.
Okay, so you are saying that you deny the characterization that you are PAP light?
I missed that word. What the characterization?
So do you deny the characterization that you are PAP light?
Well, I don't think we are. I think our policies are clearly quite different from the PAP in many ways. But it doesn't mean that we're different. That means we go against everything that the PAP for. I think we come up with our own policies based on what we think is best for the country. If it happens to agree with what the PAP's current policies are, then we will support the government. If it does not, and we think that there's a better way, then we say it. So that's why we'll come up with proposals like the redundancy insurance scheme, which the PAP panned when we first talked about it. They said that it wasn't really necessary, but that was then, and then COVID-19 hit us and the economic crisis hit us. If only we had done that earlier on, we would be in a better position to be able to fund to have this automatic stabilizer to help those people who are out of a job or going to be out of a job. So I think we have done what we can to put forward the proposals that we think are best for the country, based on our own research and based on our understanding of the ground. And it's down to Singaporeans to decide for themselves which of the policies they feel are better for Singapore. And they don't have to choose us or choose the PAP only. They can choose a blend of what they feel that is best for the country. And that's how the society progresses. I don't think we are saying that our way is the only way, and I don't think the PAP's way is the only way either. So we have to get a blend of what is the best for the country, and that's what the focus should be on.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that. I just wanted to follow up a little. Don't you think that when Dr. Balakrishnan said that, he actually legitimized and endorsed? By the way, are you having Teh Tarik?
It's just water.
What are you having there?
I should have Teh Tarik.
Yes, I should send to you. Okay. So my wife makes the best Teh Tarik. Anyway, so when Dr. Balakrishnan said that, don't you think he inadvertently endorsed the WP as a responsible and credible opposition party?
It very well might have been, and I think James's response to that was gold. So I think I think that really settles the idea of whether or not we are PAP light or we're just a moderate party which listens to all sides of our society.
Okay, thanks. So we only have about 4 minutes left. So the final question I have for you is, what would make you be open to working with other opposition parties? And I'm talking about the PSP and the SDP specifically, and you can comment on the other smaller parties, but I'm talking about these two specifically.
Okay, I think we already are. I think if you have read the statement from Pritam earlier today, he did say that he's going to look into how he can extend the resources of the leader of the opposition to even the PSP. And so I think it's important that the different parties do work together, especially those who are in parliament. But in terms of having a formal alignment or formal alliance, I think that we are still in very, very early days. And I think if you ask me what is the number one thing that should align, is that the values must align. So the values of the parties must align. Otherwise, you'll get a motley crew of parties who are who are in a way opposed to each other, but are just doing it for having a marriage of convenience, just for the sake of electoral success. And I don't think that forms a good basis for future governance in Singapore. So I think it's very important to ensure that we have an alignment of values, and there has to be a clear objective when doing so. So especially when a situation where we are now, where the opposition has no chance or no desire even to take over the government. So there's no reason why there should be any talk of a formal alliance of any sort.
Okay, interesting. Would Pritam have said that about the NC MPs if they were from the SDP?
Oh, I can't speak, but I mean that's hypothetical as well. But clearly he has done that for those NCMPs who are in the PSP. So I don't think it would be any different if any other party was elected into parliament.
Okay. So anything that you want to get off your chest that you couldn't? I didn't give you a chance to, or anything you want to say at all?
No, I just wanted to say that thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you. It's good to connect with you again after all these years, and be able to speak to your friends on your Instagram. And I think this is a start of many important things that are going to happen in the next 5 years. And I hope that Singaporeans would pay close attention to what's going on, into the debates, and not just the exciting parts where we are attacking each other or criticizing each other, but pay attention to the proposals that each side has put up. I think the PAP clearly has set a lot of expectations for what they would like the electorate to expect of the opposition right now, or the Workers' Party, in terms of coming up with alternative proposals. And I think we intend to continue putting out proposals. It's not as if we never put out alternative proposals in the past. Like I mentioned, redundancy insurance, reducing classroom sizes, and all that. Those are all legitimate proposals which we had tabled before. And we'll continue doing that. Hopefully now with more MPs, we'll be able to do even more of that. But really, it's important for Singaporeans to pay attention to that as well. Because we can put out all the proposals that we want, but if it doesn't get covered in the press, if people don't listen to, don't pay close attention to the proposals, then they will go away thinking that we didn't do anything either. So I think I encourage everybody to watch this space carefully.
Okay, thank you so much, Gerald, for taking time off your busy schedule. And just one last request: can you get Nicole and Pritam to come on my show? Okay.
You'll have to ask them too. I'll definitely convey to them the great experience I had talking with you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gerald. So I'll be uploading this later, and you can see.
Thanks, Walid.
Okay. Bye. Thank you so much.
All the best to you.
Bye, and all the best to you. And I hope you succeed in Parliament. Bye.
Thank you so much.